My name is Mark Champion. I'm going to be your host today. And first of all, I just wanted to choose two presenters that we've got. So first of all is Grant Fritchey. He's the Redgate Product Evangelist. And there you can see his contact details if you want to hit him up, ask him some questions. Even though he looks like a scary DBA, he's actually a very nice man. Grant is a data platform MVP with over 20 years experience working in IT and development and database administration. He serves on the past board of directors as executive vice president, and he's also done loads of books on SQL Server. The next presenter is a guy called Richard Macaskill. He's Redgate's product manager for SQL Clone. Before joining Redgate, he spent 20 years in IT management, database administration and development for insurance and financial services firms in London. He's also a resident expert on financial compliance and auditing. So two highly experienced DBAs that understand the complexities of a DBA's role from a real-life experience. So throughout this webinar, you'll be able to ask questions. If you look in your GoToMeeting control panel, there's a bit to ask questions there. So we'll try to answer questions throughout the presentation if we can. Otherwise, there's time at the end, and we'll spend some time looking at your questions that you have, anything that crops up. And if there is anything that we can't answer, you can speak to us at the end, and we'll be able to help you. But without much further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Grant, who's going to talk to you about DevOps and its role within the DBA arena.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Good afternoon, good morning, depends on your time zone. Thanks, Mark. And let's get going and talk about this. DevOps is pretty exciting stuff. It's a challenge that more and more people are taking on, and it's really important. We got, you can read the quote up there from Donovan Brown, the DevOps manager at Microsoft. But I'm going to talk about it just a little bit. My thing is that I didn't know I was doing DevOps. I just thought it was called work. The whole idea here is very simple. We don't want to simply deploy stuff out to production. We want to speed our deployment processes. We want things to go faster. At the same time, we want to achieve a safer deployment. So the idea is to get something out the door faster but safer, to ensure that we're protecting our production environment while simultaneously delivering the functionality that the business needs. So we're going to move quick, but we're going to validate it. And how do we do that? We've got to put a process in place. Now, the process that you see there is a circle. It's not a pipeline. It's not this straight line into production, because the fact of the matter is that you don't deploy or develop your code one time. You're constantly deploying and developing your code. You're constantly adding new functionality. You're constantly making changes, tuning queries, whatever the heck it is you're doing inside of your systems, you're constantly adding on. So you're going to go from a development process and do a build, take that build and validate it, run it through some series of tests to ensure that it's behaving exactly the way you think it ought to behave. Then you're going to take that stuff and you're going to put it together into a package, and then that package is going to get released into production. Once you've released into production, you're going to monitor, because you're going to want to, know how that package behaves now that it's out there in your production environment, and keep an eye on what's going on. And if there's any kind of changes to data, any kind of drift in behavior, you're then going to, go back into and provision your systems and start the whole process over again. And then you're just going to keep doing this again and again and again in a non-stop circular fashion over and over again. Never, ever, ever stops. And that's a great thing. I mean, because if you're an IT pro, you want to be employed, and this is how we stay employed. We keep doing work. So it's all really exciting. Now, the thing is, though, is DevOps requires us very much to protect our production environment. But we need to speed development. And one of the biggest issues you're going to have with speeding development is getting development set up with something that looks like production. I'm not going to say anything more about it. I'm going to turn this over right now to Richard, and he's going to explain to you what we mean when we say provisioning.
Okay, thanks, Grant. So when we talk about provisioning, and there's plenty to this DevOps cycle, there's plenty to cover. We've picked out a couple of items that are of particular interest to the DBA. What does the DBA care about? Well, I'd say protecting production, of course, number one. And we're going to talk about monitoring. We're going to talk about looking at the impact of changes that people are making to your production systems and how you get a handle on them, how you automate some of the tasks around getting a handle on that and do it at scale. But first, we're going to talk about provisioning. So I'm talking about provisioning in the sense of standing up environments. So DevOps, above all, says don't wait till the day of deployment, to the day of running your script to see what's going to happen in production. You need to know. You need to establish the confidence so that you can move quickly. Without that confidence, you're just being reckless. DevOps is delivering value at speed, and provisioning is an essential part of that. Now, I was a database provisioner. I was the guy who got the tickets, and I was a DBA in financial services in London for many years. And I was the guy that everyone was staring at while they were waiting for the databases to be refreshed in a particular environment so that work could begin on a hot fix or the urgent customer request that's just been reprioritized. And that's what provisioning is for a lot of us. It's the time between the decision to do some work and the ability to start delivering value, for developers to start laying down code and testing and exercising the code, for business analysts to start figuring out what it is the developers ought to be doing. So another big theme of DevOps, of course, is shifting problems left. It's not just that you don't wait till production to see the impact of change. You see it as early as possible. If you can get developers working in production-like environments with production-like data, then they spot problems at the time that they're in that problem space, while their head's in that place. And this is what provisioning for development and test is all about. And we've got a product that we think can help with that. It's called SQL Clone. But first of all, let's just run through some of those reasons that provisioning is a blocker to DevOps. So getting a database in front of developers, getting it refreshed, getting it in the right state, in a production-like state for a particular team to do some work takes time. And that's dead time. That's the time when everyone's looking across to you at your desk, or even as I had a few times, I'll admit, when the whole office is standing up looking at you because you've got a production hotfix, and the CEO's shouting over saying, how long till we can get this production hotfix in? And I'm saying, yeah, well, a couple of hours. And he's saying, a couple of hours till the fix. I'm saying, a couple of hours till the databases are restored and we can prove that the fix is going to work. You're not a popular guy at that time. And so that time, that dead time, whether it's dead time to work on a hotfix or dead time to start some new development work, is no fun. And neither is the disk space juggling. As DBAs, we spend a lot of time sort of shoveling the same bytes over and over again into multiple environments. We copy all these bytes, all these big blocks of data that don't change, that barely change. And we have to find the disk space for them. We have to go through provisioning cycles, go to the infrastructure team, try to make sure the disk space is available in the right place. That takes time. That's not valuable time. It's not a great use of your skills. And now we've got the regulatory concerns. Now this isn't going to go anywhere. This isn't going to get any easier. Compliance and regulatory concerns are just going to get harder. You may have heard in the European Union is implementing the General Data Protection Regulation. That comes into effect almost exactly a year from now, just under a year from now. And for every organization with European Union customers, regardless of your jurisdiction, doesn't matter if you're in Missouri, Miami, wherever, if you've got EU customers, you will be regulated according to a new set of regulations which are incredibly strict about how you can use your customers' data, how you can use private information. And we've got HIPAA, this is only going in one direction. So if you're not paying attention, the EU GDPR has fines of 4% of turnover or 20 million euros, whichever is the greater, for non-compliance. So that's going to exercise the thoughts of right at board level. So you're going to make sure that you've got these kind of processes under control. Then more mundanely, more prosaically, you've got teams working in shared environments because it's hard to juggle that disk space. It's hard to get those environments stood up and available for test and development. And I've worked with good, bad, indifferent teams, but even with the best teams in the world, there's always a time when you're working on a shared database because you have to, because it's large, because you've only got one environment to work in, that you're going to stand on each other's toes. There's going to be one morning someone's going to come in and say, hang on, my tests are failing. They were working yesterday. Who's touched my database? That's no fun. It's no good for team morale, and it's no good for you delivering value to your business owners or to your customers. And testing with data, I mentioned before, if you don't see that production-like data until you're in production, you're taking a huge risk. You're skating on thin ice. If you see it in staging, that's probably a little better, but it's still not enough, because the people who worked on that code, they've moved on mentally. They're in another place. They're working on another problem, and their ability to context shift back into the problem that has just been identified is, again, a huge area of friction, and it's going to slow down the team. So let me talk a little about SQL clone. First of all, in fact, though, I've just talked about some of the problems. Let me just kick off. We've got a bunch of polls here, and if you guys would humour me, I'd really like to get a take to what people's blockers at the moment are in allowing database copies to be made available to the development, test, QA, and acceptance testing teams. So if you guys don't mind if you click on the polling buttons there, that'd be really great to see what's out there. Okay, we're getting some results in. Just waiting a few more seconds to see those level out. That's interesting. Storage concerns.
Huh.
Right up there. That was strong. You know, we did this in the morning for a European audience, for the UK and European audience, and we had much lower on storage concerns. I don't know why I don't think they just got loads of storage. I think they're just more worried about other things. I think that's the problem. That's very interesting. So 50% storage concerns. Time is a blocker for everything, and regulatory concerns. Data sensitivity is number 2 on that list. Thanks for your time. That was really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to move on to showing you a little bit about what Redgate is doing about this problem of getting lifelike, realistic data, not necessarily identical to production. I'm going to get onto that in a moment, but realistic data at low cost, at speed, into your development and test environments. So no one likes getting a provisioning ticket. There's no DBA in the world who opens up the PC in the morning and sees a bunch of provisioning tickets and jumps for joy. It doesn't happen. It's the bane of our lives. And everyone's got better things to do. Your time would be better spent planning the architecture, performance tuning, anything except copying, shoveling those bytes around again and again, resetting the environments for a team that's got out of sync or isn't sure who's working on which piece. If you want to get rid of those provisioning tickets, the quickest way to do that is let the team serve themselves. So you as a DBA can take control of what it is that they can self-serve. You can put together, now you're probably going to do this in a maintenance window, you can put together the batches, the automation that is going to allow you to make available to the teams the databases that they want to serve to themselves on demand. Now, the way that SQL clone works is we're API first, we're PowerShell first. We know that you want to run long-running processes when you're not there. So I'll show you how that works in a moment. We also know that you want to get rid of all that time spent juggling disk space. With SQL clone, you can put your data wherever you can find space. Just a UNC file path, that's where you store your images ready to be delivered as SQL clone databases. And increasing time to market is the consequence of giving you production-like databases. And DevOps for databases, DevOps is all about shifting left. It's all about finding issues with realistic data and identifying as early as possible, while everybody's in that problem space, what the issues are, what needs more thought, what needs more testing, and getting that problem solved so that you've got great confidence as you move faster and you get those changes delivered into production. Now, if anyone's thinking, I don't know about this, I don't know about copying data into the development environment, I'm not sure about this, I would strongly recommend reading Continuous Delivery, the seminal book on DevOps for the database. It wasn't called DevOps at the time, it was called Continuous Delivery. If you're doing continuous delivery, then have a look at the example set by the LMAX Exchange, where Dave Farley and Jez Humble were formulating these ideas, bringing these ideas together into a way of working. And I can tell you they were copying production databases into development every night from the very beginning. They'd written their own sanitization scripts, of course. They'd put together their own workflows. They wrote their own build servers, for goodness sake. They did everything themselves because they were the first. But copying your production data into your development environment is very much an enabler of getting that acceleration and getting that pace going. So with that, I'm just going to switch into a little bit of an explanation about how SQL Clone works. So SQL Clone uses the virtualization technology that's built into 64-bit Windows. And we do a two-stage process. So instead of repeatedly doing one big long-running process of shifting bytes, so doing backups and restores, and then further restores, then further restores, all of which are long-running, we say we're going to take that pain once. It's kind of a pay once, like unlimited refills kind of a system. You take a data image, which is a point-in-time representation of a SQL Server database. You can use a backup file or a connection to a SQL Server database in order to create this data image. And this is the one piece of byte shoveling we're doing. This is the one shift of bytes. And we take basically a copy of the MDF and LDF files that make up the database. We put them in a location, a regular Windows share, regular UNC file path. And once we've done that, we can deliver clone databases very, very rapidly in a few seconds and using a few tens of megabytes. The reason we're doing that, the reason we're able to do that, is that the data image, that single copy, is used again and again by these clone databases. But it's an immutable copy. It's never modified. We used a feature on the virtual disk service to mount those databases with a differencing disk so that the data image is never modified and the changes are isolated locally to where the clone databases have been delivered. So I'm going to show that in practice. It's probably easier to show in practice than it is to explain. I'm going to jump into my workstation here. And I've got this is just a completely regular workstation. This is my laptop on the desk here in Redgate. Absolutely nothing. So I've got SQL Clone running here. This is the SQL Clone user interface. And you can see here, if I zoom in a little, I've got some, this is a dashboard, and here you can see some data images that I've previously prepared. This one, you can see there's several copies of AdventureWorks, of course, that I use for my demos. And you can see that I'm creating one each night because I mentioned with PowerShell first. The PowerShell's interface is incredibly easy to use. You can put together batches probably during your maintenance window after your backups have completed and create images that are ready for consumption by the development teams. And then again, when they're consuming them, if they want to run it in a batch, if they want to make it part of their CI/CD process and deliver clone databases by running a batch within whatever scheduler or Bamboo or TeamCity, that's all available to you, or you can use this interface. I'm going to show you what creating a image looks like in SQL Clone. So in this case, I can take an image from a backup or from a SQL Server connection. Now, you most likely want to use a backup if you've got any concern about changes on your production environment. So SQL Clone uses a very small agent, but it runs as a Windows service. But that means that would mean you have to put a small piece of software on your production SQL Server. A lot of people are not comfortable with that. We know that. So that's why we recommend using backups. A regular .back or the Redgate format, .sqb format, can be used to create a data image. So you can take that that backup file out of your production environment and then do all the rest of it in your non-production environment. In this case, I'm just going to use a direct connection to a SQL Server instance. So these are the instances that I've got registered on my machine. You can see I've been doing a bit of testing. I'm just going to take from my dev instance on my local workstation. I'm going to pick a small database just for the sake of the demonstration. And I'm going to place it into one of these Windows file shares. So absolutely nothing special about this. This is just a box of disks that Redgate IT had lying around. They let me set up a UNC path to one of them. So I'm going to pick this one here. And I've got access. And I'm going to call this image for webinar and kick off creating that image. So we can see the information about what's happening here. This is going to create an image into that file share based on that database from that instance. Let me just jump out again. Like most progress bars, this is designed to hang at 3% and then really get going just when you think nothing's going to happen. But this, just to reiterate, this is the one time that you're moving the bytes of the database around. The other operations, the things that are more interesting that you're going to get to see in a couple of moments, are the creating clone databases, and that's where you really get the payoff. So this is the pay once. This is the first cup of coffee, and then the rest of them are free. So this kicks into life, sits and has a little think just before it completes, and if we switch back to the dashboard when we get to the end there, I'll show you that we've got a new image that's ready for developers. So this image is created. Switch back to the dashboard. I'll see that with all the others. There's my image. It doesn't have any clones. So I'm going to create some clones using the user interface. Here I've got the Stack Overflow database. This is a bit more interesting. This is getting to an interesting size. We've got a 114 gig database. Brent Ozar very handily makes that available, of course, every few months. He takes a cut of the Stack Overflow database behind the Stack Overflow website. And I'm going to deliver this as a clone database. I'll just go into do that into my laptop again, and I'm going to call this SO clone 1 with an underscore, because I know Mr. Fritchey hates my naming convention. So SO clone 1 is going to get delivered. This should take a few seconds, and you can see that's done. That's just a few seconds. 115 gig database has been delivered into my local workstation, just a laptop without a lot of disk space. Let's just do that again. I want to show that the copies are isolated, so I'm just going to give myself another one. What else? SO clone 2. And just to be clear, the operation here is creating a virtual mount point. It's attaching a database through that mount point. It's going to take a few seconds regardless of the size of that original database. It's not linear. It doesn't follow the size of the database, and it's going to take some tens of megabytes, 80 megabytes in this case, to store those images on the local machine. So let's have a look in SQL Server Management Studio. If I refresh my databases node, I can see my two databases there. I can see they look like completely regular databases. These are read-write copies. SQL Server, the SQL Server engine, doesn't know any difference at all. Remember, we're using the storage virtualization in Windows to perform this. SQL Server engine, if we look under the hood, it sees a full-size database. That size there is the same size as the original. If we look at the files, we can see that they're on a path SQL clone beta. If we look in that location, by the way, I always forget to show how little disk space I have before I start this demo. I'm still going to have 15 gig after I've delivered a few more of these. But if I look in that path, SQL clone beta, and let's have a look at that last one to be delivered, SO clone 2. And inside this folder, I can see two things. I can see my disk VHD, so that's a differencing disk. That holds any changes. So if I make changes to the database when I'm connected to this clone database, the changes get put into that disk.vhd, whereas the original is mounted through this 2 terabyte mount point. And if I click through, I can see the originals. There are the Stack Overflow MDF and LDF files. Now, of course, this is a VHD mount point. This isn't actually taking up any space at all on my C drive, but to the SQL Server engine, it looks like it is. A word on the size of that mount point. So this is a logical 2 terabyte allocation. That's because I'm using the VHD format. Until about now, that's been a limitation of the SQL clone product because we implemented that VHD engine first. I can announce that from Monday, we've got version 2 of SQL clone coming out, and that 2 terabyte limit is gone. The new limit is 64 terabytes, which hopefully will be enough for most of you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But 64 terabytes is the new limit for SQL clone. But let's have a look at those clone databases. Let me just drop out of those database properties. So I said they work like any other database. Let's just see if we can prove that. Put a little demo here. and I'm going to connect to my clone database. SQL prompts, of course, another Redgate product. If you're not using SQL prompts, why not? SQL prompts is fantastic IntelliSense, and it works with SQL clone databases. In fact, everything works with SQL clone databases because they're just databases. Everything that interacts in SQL Server Management Studio, in Visual Studio with databases works the same as it does with any other, because they are just databases. So I'm just going to run a couple of queries here. Let's have a look at the users. Okay, I can see the Stack Overflow founders. I can see Jeff Atwood and Joel Spolsky there, the guy who set up Stack Overflow back in the day. I can look at the most recent posts that are in the Stack Overflow database. We can see some standard stuff there. I'm trying to write VB script. Don't try to write VB script. I can, and this is read-write, of course. I can run in some new data. I'm going to just run in 1,000 rows. Okay, I've run in 1,000 rows of data into there. Now I'm going to have a look at the latest posts again. And now I've got my sample data. Here's another tip of how can I learn SQL. So there's a latency, of course. This is one of the questions we always get asked is, what's the performance like? It just depends so much on your circumstance that we can't give you a 20%, 30% an answer that's really going to hold up for everybody. What I can tell you is that we've had a couple of thousand people on a beta. We've got customers using it in earnest across many environments. One of our case studies, Payment Sense, you can see them on our website. They're running 18 development environments. In each development environment is a collection of databases that are all referencing the same SQL clone image. They tell me it's working really nicely, really smooth. So maybe for that really high-end performance tuning, if you're running a high-frequency trading system, you're trying to get your queries down from 10 milliseconds to 2 milliseconds, maybe you want to look at another tool, maybe you want to be working on bare metal. But for most of the things that most developers, QA, testers, analysts do, we think SQL clone databases work pretty well. I've just connected to my second clone database, and I'm just going to rerun that query. And of course, that's unaffected. That sees the original data. Okay, so I mentioned the PowerShell interface. I haven't shown you that yet. Let's just have a little look at how you might do a few things on PowerShell. So back in my SQL clone interface, I can see those two clones that I've delivered from Stack Overflow. I'm going to deliver some more. So I can't go through every line of PowerShell, of course, but I can show you basically that we've got a pretty simple interface. The commandlets are pretty much as you'd expect. You connect to the SQL clone server. You give it the URL. You reference an image. Once you've referenced the image, you create a reference to the destinations, the places you want to deliver the SQL clone databases. And in this case, I'm just going to loop around this new SQL clone commandlet in order to deliver those clone databases. In my scenario, I'm imagining that we've just come out of the meeting room. We've just been in with the big boss, and he said, "We've got to work on this hotfix. I want everyone on it. I want 3 developers. I want all the developers who've got those workstations. I'm going to pattern match on that WKS. are going to get a fresh copy of the Stack Overflow database ready for use for that hotfix. So let me just hit an F5 on there, and that's going to create clone databases for that image. I can see them popping up. They're done. They're done already. So that's I've just delivered 315 gig databases to 3 workstations. Let me prove that to you. I've got connections to those workstations here, and if we refresh each of those databases nodes, we can see 3 completely isolated copies of Stack Overflow ready for developers to work on. There's examples on there are worked examples on the SQL clone documentation site that you might want to reference. Let me just tidy up. It's good to tidy up after your demos. So I'm just going to run a little batch here that's going to find all my clone databases that have been created from that image. It's going to blow them away. Hit F5 on that, jump back in here, and I can see I can blow them away just as easily as I created them. And again, this is DevOps because it's cattle, not pets. Okay, so with that, we're going to run another poll here. What would really like to know? How frequently do you refresh your non-production databases. If you could pick the most frequent there, that would be really helpful. I'd really like to know the answers to that. And again, don't be shy to ask any questions. We'll try to answer them as they pop up, or we can answer them at the end. We'll just see what's going to work best. Okay. Great. Just give that a few more seconds. Awesome. All right. Thanks for all your votes. Ad hoc wins. Yeah, ad hoc. Okay, so again, slightly different to Europe. There's a few more dailies. I think weekly was the most frequent in the
weekly
webinar, wasn't it? Awesome. Okay, so SQL Clone is available on. You get a fully functional trial. You download it today from the Redgate website. If you're worried about the 2 terabyte limit, that's going away. You can start running your trial, and then you should get a pop-up on Monday saying upgrade to the latest version, and that's got the 64 terabyte limit. And let us know. So just got a quick question popping in. Yes, this is a very good question, and I was hoping it was going to come up. Is there a method to encrypt sensitive data when moving data to development? And absolutely, yes, there is right now. So this is we ran a survey that you can find on the Redgate website on database provisioning. Of our respondents, 72% said they already do copy production data to non-production environments. And something like 30% of them said that they run a script to sanitize it. So for those people who've got a script to sanitize it, we've got this workflow that you can put together in PowerShell, of course. Now, we know that's not enough for everybody. We know that's not enough for many people. Several of our customers are doing exactly that. They're running scripts. They're changing all the emails to example@test.com and those kind of operations. But we're also very actively working on data masking, on bringing some real masking functionality out of the box into this product. So watch this space. At the moment, it's a case of running your scripts as part of your provisioning workflow that you're going to put together using that PowerShell interface. Very soon, we're going to be able to help you with that. Okay, I think we're going to jump. I'll hand back to Grant, and Grant's going to talk to you about where monitoring fits into the DevOps cycle.
Okay, thank you. I always love watching SQL Clone demos. That's so much fun. All right, let's talk about monitoring for a second. Now, the fact is that I'm not going to try to tell you should monitor. Everyone is monitoring now. The message has gotten out. Everyone knows they're supposed to keep an eye on their production servers, that they're supposed to watch them, that you want to know if their servers are online, you want to know if your servers are available, you want to know if you've got any kind of issues, failures, failed backups, if there's performance problems. All of this stuff is known, right? We're on top of this. So I'm not going to tell you to monitor your servers because you're already monitoring your servers. What I am going to talk to you about is the fact that monitoring is a fundamental aspect of DevOps. Monitoring is absolutely part of development and deployment. It is not simply something that DBAs do. It is not simply something that's part of, a production protection scheme for the business. It is absolutely part and parcel of development. So let's talk about why. The fact is that in DevOps, in approaching something so that we're treating development as operations, we're treating operations as development, we're approaching everything from this code-focused thing, we have to think about the fact that we are doing more deployments, that we are going to be moving more things out into production. More frequent, smaller deployments is one of our goals. To ensure that we've got good testing, good validation, and when it goes into production, we monitor so that we can see the impact of that deployment, so that we're not shocked by what happens. We can see what's going on. If something happens, if we do a deployment and for whatever reason our testing failed and everything goes south, I mean, it literally breaks, we've got monitoring in place to validate that. If things change over time that are not part of deployment, just simply statistics changing, data changing. You could see differences in behavior over time, and that changes in behavior over time is going to drive you back into your development process. So it's not simply changes out of development that are driving this. It's changes within production that will drive more development. And also, we're going to use monitoring as a plan for the future, because we're going to see, how much disk space we're using, how much CPU we're using, that kind of stuff, and have to go in and, make those determinations for how we're behaving, how we're developing, what we're developing on, do we need new hardware. All of this stuff ties right back into that circle, ties right back into that whole DevOps process. So it's not, it's not a DBA thing. It is a DevOps thing. It's part of what we do. Now, the question I've got for you guys is, I want to know how you're doing your monitoring. So I've got another little poll here for you. And so I'd like to know, are you not monitoring at all, which I don't believe. I'll bet everyone is. Are you using Redgate? Are you using something else? Have you got your own tools? Or do you have scripts that you're running? Shockingly enough, at least 2 people are not monitoring at all. And that's scaring me, I got to tell you. The votes are coming in. I'll wait here for a second for you guys. That's fine. You're doing fine. Make sure you get your vote in. Just curious how we do. I'm shocked. I'll just tell you, we did the European thing earlier today, and none of them were not monitoring. So I'm disappointed that any of you guys are not monitoring your stuff. All right, give you just another second here. All right, let me show you the results. There you go. You can see that there's a number of third-party tools, some SQL Monitor, people developing their own tools and using your own scripts. And then just a few people, look like 3 or 4, who are actually just not monitoring, which, wow, okay. Well, so I want to get you guys monitoring if you're not monitoring, and I definitely want you to monitor for DevOps. So let's talk about, let's talk about that. I'm going to show you SQL Monitor as soon as I find it. There we go. All right, so this is SQL Monitor. This is something you guys can get and look at yourself. You can even follow along with me today if you want to. This is monitor.redgate.com. This is our SQL Monitor tool, but we've got it exposed out there so you guys can see it, so you can play with it. What you're seeing is our website, SimpleTalk, and SQL Server Central are being monitored in real time, and we expose that information to you guys so you can see it. Now, this is not my, while we're monitoring production, this is not my production monitoring suite. And the reason I want to emphasize that is because if I have active alerts that are over a week old, someone should fire me because that's something I should be managing. And so I just want to point out that we leave this stuff up so you guys can see it here. We've got our own internal monitoring that we actually use for doing things. So, and these are our servers right here, SimpleTalk and SQL Server Central. Now, I don't want to talk to you about monitoring. I don't want to talk to you about performance tuning. I want to talk to you about DevOps. So let's drill into SQL Server Central and take a look at what's going on. Now, this is the last 24 hours of information on SQL Server Central. You can see that there's, activity on the system, CPU's been going, memory use. There's some wait statistics. There's definitely some disk I/O occurring at various points, including a fairly active spike going on right now. And, we can scroll around and, we can see things like the top 10 queries. We can see the top 10 current waits. We can even see, very specific metrics on compilations, latches and locks, buffer cache, all that fun stuff. How much disk are we using? Are there processes running on the server? And that's all great, right? It's all awesome. It's absolutely a part of a monitoring system. It's what you need to understand what's going on your server. It's not enough from a DevOps standpoint, though. What we want from DevOps is we want more. So we're actually adding some functionality inside of SQL Monitor that's going to be able to track deployments as you make them on your server. So if you look right down here, I've got a little arrow. I'll zoom in even so you guys can see a little bit better. Hang on, get that out of my way. There we go. Hang on. There we go. Oh, come on. Yay. All right. That silly thing is really in the way. There. Woo! So Steve Jones did a deployment earlier this morning to our server, and we've captured that. So we actually know that, you know, at 8:58, I suspect his timer must be a little different than ours. He scheduled it probably for 9. But anyway, that was deployed. And the beauty of it is now we can, zoom back out, we can see that there was a deployment that occurred at this point in time, and we can see that before and after that deployment, there wasn't some radical change in the behavior of our system. Now, I can even take this and move over and take a look at what happened before and after that deployment, and take a look at this particular range so we know what's going on. And it's going to reload the system here. It just takes a second. It's good? All right. And there it goes. And so we can see the top 10 queries that were occurring within this time frame. And so there's this one insert query was running there, and it's ran fairly long, but it's not affected by the deployment. At least from what we can see, there's no changes in behavior caused by the deployment over that period of time. Same thing with some of the other Spark lines that you can see what's going on. But you know what? Let's validate that. Let's actually change that time again. Go back prior to our deployment. Take a look at our top 10 queries and see if there's anything changing there. There it goes. Awesome. And you'll see that that same one query is still running long. That is the long-running query there. And there's not really any big changes to our behavior because of that deployment. So we're now working from a position of knowledge. We see what's going on. Now let's assume, though, let's just take a jump on this and say, you know what, we do have a big spike here on disk I/O that occurred. Let's assume that corresponds with the deployment, or maybe it might correspond with the deployment. We're not sure. Well, okay, so we've identified that there's a spike. Let's analyze it. We'll click on that that spike point. It will take us into the comparison, and now we've got, you know, the I/O for that stuff right there available, and we can compare the baseline. So we can compare to 2 hours earlier, or better still, let's compare to 24 hours earlier. One set of time to a previous set of time. So what we're looking at is approximately 6 a.m. On our server this morning, and 6 a.m. on our server yesterday morning. And you'll notice that 6 a.m. this morning, there's a big spike there, but 6 a.m. yesterday morning at almost exactly the same time, we see almost exactly the same pattern. So in short, what we're actually identifying is, hey, guess what? There's some kind of scheduled process running, and it's running the same time every day, and that's causing our disk I/O problems here, if it's a problem. But it's not the deployment, because we know that the deployment went out, and we can compare this baseline. Now, we can even extend this baseline so that we look at more information, and it's going to go back in time a whole series of days. What if we take it in, look at the regions, so it just smooths everything out and we can see what's going on in a more general fashion? Again, the information there suggests that that deployment did not cause problems. Now let me go back to here. Excellent. So what we've got now with the ability to mark a deployment, we've got knowledge. We can know whether or not something's happened on the system, and whether or not the deployment has gone south, or whether or not the deployment has caused an issue. We're no longer working off of guesses. We're no longer working off of, supposition or someone informing us of information. We're now working off of knowledge. We're taking the information that we've got, and we can literally start running reports and putting things together so that we can identify whether or not there's an issue on our system. Let me just refresh this so it goes back up to the current time. There we go. And yeah, we are still seeing some kind of CPU spike going on and an I/O spike continuing. I actually don't know. I'm being completely honest. I have no idea what's going on, but the reads are going nuts on the server right now. It's kind of cool to see it in real time. Anyway, it's not caused by the deployment, though. I know that much. I do have a question here. Dan wants to know what version of SQL Monitor is this? This is vNext, buddy. It's not out the door just yet, but it's coming soon. So keeping, you know, as Richard already said, watch this space. We are working on plugging that in, so we've got some new functionality. Now, I've got another question for you guys. I want to launch the poll, and I'm curious as to how many servers you're monitoring. If you can let me know. Mainly your production servers. Although if you're monitoring more than production, I'd be curious about that too. But we really want to know. So far, the distribution's looking about the same as Europe. So I'm not shocked at all. If you already have the toolkit, is SQL Monitor included or is it an additional cost? Well, if you have the toolkit, you have a license of SQL Monitor. Tool belt, yeah, tool belt, yeah, toolkit, tool belt. If you have the tool belt, you have a SQL Monitor license. All right, how are we doing on the votes? Around 60%. Let's give you guys another chance or two to vote. So everybody got their vote in? Okay, I'm going to close this and let you guys see it. Looks like most people are only monitoring about 20 servers in production or less. So cool. All right, so I'm really excited about this because we're taking monitoring and we're moving away from the concept that monitoring is about. Hang on, let me move there. We're taking away the concept that monitoring is about, you know, what's going on in production, and we're expanding past that. Monitoring is about deployment and development as well as what's going on in production. It's taking the knowledge that you get from keeping track of your production servers and cycling it back into your development processes. It's taking your development processes and marrying it into your production monitoring so that you know, you're not surprised, you're not guessing, you know when there are issues coming up on production because of deployments. So that's about it. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to open this up just for questions and answers. There's a couple more here on licensing. Is the license for one server and over or for more? If you have a tool belt, it's for one server to start with. There's ways to expand past that and licensing schemes. Call the sales. I'm a nerd. I'm not going to try to explain it to you. Call the sales guys. They'll help you out and hook you up. So I stick to the nerd stuff and talk about that. Is any questions that we have outstanding now?
Yeah, I've got a couple here. Does SQL Monitor work with availability groups? From Tom. SQL Monitor.
Oh, SQL Monitor. Does SQL Monitor work with availability groups? Everyone asked about availability groups and clones, so I just kind of like shut up here. Does SQL Monitor work with availability groups? Absolutely it does. We've got metrics set up for working with availability groups, and we've got various different kinds of controls and alerts. You know, we'll know if it fails over. You know, we absolutely support availability groups with SQL Monitor. That's just a 100% yes.
Oh, and also, does SQL Clone work with availability groups?
There, that's the one I expected.
Yeah. That was kind of inevitable. So the question is, where is your availability group? Where are your databases configured in an availability group? If it's only production, because you're only concerned about availability in production, yet you want to take those production databases and make them available, or a sanitized copy available to development, test, and QA, where you don't have availability groups, that absolutely works. That's So we'd recommend using the backup file, so the .back or .sqb file that is the backup of one of those databases in an availability group. Take that out of your production environment, turn that into a SQL clone image, and then you can deliver SQL clone databases from that. However, if you're one of those rare people who has availability groups, who has resilience in their non-production environments, I know some people do in staging. I've come across one or two who have very, very production-similar environments, even lower down than that. Right now, SQL Clone can't deliver a clone database into an availability group. So from an availability group into a regular SQL Server instance as a clone database, yeah, that's fine. That works.
Okay. Another one. Does SQL Clone work on Azure?
So SQL Clone works on a full SQL Server instance. So if you're using IaaS, if you're using, creating virtual machines in Azure, then yes, it does work. If you're using Dev Test Labs and the virtual machines in that, then that works fine as well. The SQL Azure SQL DB, we don't have control of the file system. So we're not able to mount SQL Clone databases in Azure SQL DB. It is something we're looking at. We're talking to Microsoft about whether we'll be able to deliver clone-like benefits in Azure SQL DB. You may have heard of the managed instance work that's going on at Microsoft at the moment. They announced that a couple of months ago, or 6 weeks ago or something. And that's all about making your SQL instances in Azure, where you've got benefits of all the elastic pooling and the rest of it, and dynamic management and control from scripts, from PowerShell. That's getting a lot more like SQL Server on-premise. We're hopeful we might be able to meet in the middle at some point. But right now, no, you can't use Azure SQL DB. You can use IaaS in Azure, and as long as you've got a full SQL Server instance, then we can work with that.
And same thing on Amazon. If you've got an Amazon VM, you could use it there, but not in Redshift or something.
Cool. Got a SQL Monitor question here. Can I customize what's recorded by SQL Monitor? I'm guessing this means the metrics that are recorded.
Oh, absolutely. We not only do we have the ability to create custom metrics, we've got a whole series of custom metrics created on the web around things like mirroring, some of the other stuff that's not just built into the product, but that people still need. We've already built out some scripts, so you can go and get those scripts and plug them right into your monitoring and move from there. Not only does it capture the metrics, but then you can set up alerting on those metrics. You can have it spit out other stuff. A question that came in this morning about alerts, I just want to bring this up because I meant to bring it up during my talk. Not only can you fire alerts, but you can actually hook the alerts up so that they go, you can send an alert, say, to SCOM or Slack. That's the word I was trying to find, Slack, because every developer loves Slack. So you can actually have some, if a query, say, was suddenly running long, or something, the deployment caused a problem, you could actually send a message to Slack to let developers know instantly that there's something going on. So it goes right back to that whole concept of DevOps and crossing the lines to ensure that we're communicating as much as possible, developers to DBAs, DBAs to developers, and everyone else, frankly, within the whole process of development and deployment. There is one question here, is this recorded? And fingers crossed, yes. It should be. We'll have that published within a day or two at the end of this session.
Got another one on SQL Clone. Can you update an image live?
Right. So right now, the image that you create is a copy at a point in time. So that's immutable. That's you can't. So the straight answer is no. So what we normally have, what our customers doing at the moment is that they have these batches that are regularly recreating images. So they've got a snapshot, they've got a copy of production, say with some masking scripts run as of last night. I should have pointed actually on the masking area, on the masking question. As I mentioned, we're actively researching it. go to the Redgate blogs, blogs.redgate.com. Type in, there's a search box at the top, type in mask there. There's a bunch of articles about it. There's a live, we've got some prototype software on data masking that you can get involved with. And there's also, I've got a blog post up there about how you can put a few Redgate products together that help you to, with the data masking problem, help you make sure that the copy that you're distributing has already been sanitized. So just a little aside there. Back to the question, updating an image live. We are looking at that. We do think that we may have some options there. That's on our list of things to work through, kind of second half of this year. But right now it's a case of recreating the image as of the point in time that you want to use it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys, for attending this. I really hope that you've learned something from it. We've got a load more questions that we can't answer here, so we'll try and respond to everybody personally later on. But if you've got any other questions that you think about later on, the email address sqlclone@redgate.com or sqlmonitor@redgate.com. Fire something up to them, and we'll definitely be in touch as soon as we can. Yeah, so all that remains to say is thank you very much to Grant, thank you very much, excuse me, to Richard, and thank you very much for everybody for attending. We'll ping up the recording of this as soon as possible. But thanks, guys, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.